Pretty much, really, I don't want to stand here and bore you too much with my background, but I feel the urge to at least give you a little bit of an idea of what I have done and where we're going. I'm very, very honored to be here in front of all of you, and really anything that has to do with Michigan State I'm very excited to do because I graduated from here. I loved MSU. Didn't have the opportunity that Paul's talking about, but all the different funds that you guys can reach into, which is quite remarkable. Pretty much, really, what I want to touch on today is really the idea of an entrepreneur and the idea of where you want to go. So this is going to be very loose, nothing really too structured in terms of structure in terms of what we're going to do today. So feel free to ask questions at any given moment. The idea of an entrepreneur for me, I never really thought that I was one. And today, almost every day on a regular basis, you question that idea. Are you the right one? You read so much about Steve Jobs and other people and extremely successful people, and it's amazing because what we see today is the end result. And I think any person that tells you only look at the end result is not an entrepreneur. There is no way you can be successful without going through so much before you get to that point that you feel the success. But it's funny because entrepreneurs never look at themselves as successful. Even 20 years, 30 years, and take the years out and put millions and billions behind it, most of these people will never tell you that they feel the success. Because it's hard to define. And a lot of entrepreneurs, it's an appetite. The more you love it, the more you keep doing it. And the more you keep doing it, the more challenges you'll face. Because you always take the path that is difficult. It's not easy for everybody to go to, and that's why you're an entrepreneur. So there are some major characteristics for a person that wants to become an entrepreneur. And there's multiple definitions of what an entrepreneur is. But honestly, for me, at the end of the day, it comes back to what you want it to be. You find a lot of people, what I call creating a job for themselves. And there's a huge difference, that mentality of creating a job for yourself. You're an entrepreneur yourself, but not the Steve Jobs entrepreneur. Not the Google mentality. Creating a job is really, I don't want to work for anybody. I want to go in, get out when I want to. I want to take as many vacations as I want to. That's not the entrepreneurial spirit that we're talking about. So there's a huge difference. The entrepreneur that wants to build something that will last forever and have other people carry through after they're gone, that's an entirely different mentality. That's a 24/7 mentality. So it's not about the number of hours that you work. So you have to have that characteristic of what is it that I want to be? Do I want to create a job for myself and not have anybody tell me what to do? That's not the mentality of the people that grew their business way after themselves. Does that make sense? And when we're all in college, we look at the end result. We never look at the beginning. We never look at the steps. I interview tons and tons of people that are interested in working, whether on the Biggby side or the 7C side. And I don't like to admit it, but it's difficult because a lot of college people believe that you graduate from college, you need to have that corner office. Otherwise, I didn't go to school for that. Excuse me. So the idea of an entrepreneur is going to take a lot more work than sometimes what is led to believe. If you really look at the depth of a true entrepreneur, you're going to find that there's a lot more that goes into it, and you almost eat dirt and you don't eat it all before you become successful. You have to fail multiple times before you see that gain. So the idea here is you got to follow that passion. Success will follow if you know where you go, not exactly where you want to go, but you know the direction of success. So the direction of success, you have to give up a lot of that freedom that you might have because you're going to the end goal, and you don't know exactly sometimes the end goal. You want to build an empire, but there's no book out there that you can get to build that empire. Steve Jobs didn't have one. Google didn't have one. And a lot of it, do you want to go IT side, or do you want to go, food and beverage side, or do you want to go on translation side? Whatever it is, you almost dictate their own destiny. In the Biggby world, when I joined the Biggby, after 7 years of banking and honestly having unbelievable success I never thought of, I said, you know what? There's nothing in this thing for me. I can't give it anymore because I'm exhausted. There's no more ideas I have going. So they offered me to become an area manager in Kalamazoo with 14 branches. I said, I don't want that headache for 14 branches. Anyway, so I got out of banking. The big decision was, what's next? I had no idea what's next. My brother kept telling me, come and join me in Biggby. And I said, hell no, I don't want to work with you. We don't want that family thing. We're very close to the family, and we're very tight business. And I've seen a lot of it in the banking world. Partnerships just don't work. Families just, it's a big mess. So anyways, after exploring a lot of different options, I came back to point one, and I did join him. So I joined him with the one condition: I'm going to have my own store, and if I need help, I'll come to you. He said, sure, no problem. But he knew better. He knew that I was going to quickly come to him. So I did. But it's okay to realize your own strengths and weaknesses in some of the stuff. His passion is in that food and beverage. He can open 100 stores a day. That's his life. He can do it 24/7. That's his life. I can work 24/7, but in a different area, a different niche, a different passion for me. Okay. The hardest thing with any business is, honestly, and one of the traits for you as an entrepreneur, you can't be like me and not good in math. You know, numbers are very, very important, because you see people focusing on the top line. You can sell anything after you convince people with it. But the problem is, are you watching that back end? So as an entrepreneur, you find yourself doing 20 jobs in one. You got to be the lawyer, you got to be the HR, you got to be the advertising guy, you got to be the finance guy, you got to be the mother, the father. You're all of it. You're all of it. You're the motivator when everything gets tight. I remember in 2008, 2009, my brother and I would get our paychecks and put it in the drawer. We couldn't cash it. It was that bad, but we couldn't let anybody else know that it was that bad. So it's an entirely different world, and you have to go home and smile and have your kids and family feel like you're in command of the world, and you're not. But you got to be able to fake it. 7C, when we started in 2008, we used to be called Global Image Network, and it's funny because Global Image Network was really created because my wife is a graphic designer and she did some things, and the way we started actually the translation world was from my banking days. A client came up to me and says, hey, I know you speak Arabic, can you help us with a project? Sure, not me, but I'll get you somebody. The idea is, it's okay to get into a field that you don't know much about as long as you're willing to learn it and master it, if that's what you want to do. You know, to work for a startup company, in a way, you yourself have to be somewhat of an entrepreneur. Because I don't have a textbook to give you yet. I'm not Google that has everything already defined, and you click here, you'll click here, you'll click here, and it will tell you how to do things. So that's a huge struggle. So when I recruit, it's difficult for me to find somebody to come in and be willing to live with the chaos and not having everything defined. Does that make sense? And that's a difficult thing. Not everybody likes that mentality. A lot of people like a job with a job description, and that's it. Pull me in that box, pull me in that zone, and I'll do a really, really good job. But when I tell you, overall, what we're looking at, and really I want you to be a project coordinator or project manager, and here's what the project manager does for us, and then you come to me tomorrow with a question that was not in that same sentence that I said yesterday, and you look at me and it's like, what do I do? If you don't have that little bit of a common sense and the idea of trying to figure it out on your own, then we'll struggle. Because most of what we do, especially in languages are very subjective. So you got to be able to work in a very subjective manner most of the time. Not all of us in this room can write the same article. If I give you the same parameters to write an article about your experience at Michigan State, every one of us will write it different. Not because the experience is different, but the writing style is different. Your vocabulary is going to be different. And the same thing with translation. I can have 5 different translators translate the same document. They're going to have a lot of variation. So that's the same thing with the job. So you have to be able to adapt to that culture of the industry itself. And that's a struggle for us. On the Biggby side, it's just not as lucrative as a college graduate would want it to be. If I hire you today as a manager, not saying you guys, but overall, a lot of people think of a manager as, I'll tell everybody what to do. I don't have to be there at 5:30 in the morning. I don't have to be the guy behind the line. Well, unfortunately for us, the manager do have to open the store, close the store, work behind the line. So the definition of what you want might be different than what the reality is for that particular industry.
There's a question from the live stream. There may be some others here looking to start their own companies or looking at other franchises. Could you explain, maybe you thought of starting your own coffee shop and why you kind of went through franchising, goods, bads?
Sure. It's a great question. You know, for us, it's interesting. We started with Biggby from the beginning, so we feel like we're almost owners of the name and the whole side of it. But there are those moments that when you disagree with corporate, you're like, gee, you know, if we have our own thing, it would be much better. But the franchise, again, it really depends on you. It comes back to you. I don't know if there is such a mentality of I want to be in business that way, nobody tells me what to do. I think that's a horrible thought, because I don't believe in it, because if you don't have an actual boss that tells you that, your customers tell you that anyways. So you have bosses all the time. It doesn't matter how you look at it. It's just they're defined differently. Getting in the franchise, it gives you the system. It gives you the peace of mind. It tells you what works and what doesn't work. You're able to share a lot more. If you're doing it on your own, which Biggby started on your own, that's phenomenal. But you have to be the person that knows where you want to go to build something like that. For us, we were a lot more comfortable continuing with the Biggby path. We love the model. It works. We're the first ones to tell you that it does work. But it doesn't work like what everybody thinks. It's not just a matter that you have a Biggby name or Starbucks name or whatever it is, and it's going to work. It doesn't work by itself. So anytime that you think you want to be part of something that is successful and you're going to gain back from it, I think the consumers are a lot more educated nowadays. It's much, much harder to get by just a name or just by the idea of a drive-through. I think all of us have a lot more accessibility to a lot more things than we did 10, 20 years ago. We like the franchise idea from that perspective. We thought about starting another, not coffee, but a different concept, and that's something that we might still explore. But both have a lot of pros and cons to it. But at the end of the day, honestly, it comes back to you and what you want to do. And where is your drive? Where is your passion?
As far as hiring entrepreneurial side, do you ever have problems with people who have too much of their own agenda? Or maybe is it welcome for people who are sometimes looking to become a business partner?
For us, we actually welcome that. For us, we would have no problem with somebody saying, hey, you know what? I want to have my own coffee shop in the future. We have that all the time. The question is, I think, is what are you willing to do to learn from us if that's what you're looking for, to come and get that experience? The difficulty becomes if you're coming in to push your own agenda versus really learn the system. And we get that a lot of times. I mean, we don't like hiring people that have a lot of coffee experience, which is really weird, right? If you come to me and say, no, I have 10 years of experience managing a store at Starbucks, I'm not interested. They do it so different. Are you that person that is going to come in and learn our system or push their system on me? Does that make sense? So, yes, we welcome that. We love it. And you know what? We'll actually tell you, if you want to have a store within our own stores and run it as we're doing the whole thing together, we would have no problem. But the chemistry on the personal has to work. And there has to be that trust issue in terms of how do we run it? Because everybody's got a better idea of how to run it. Do know that. Every manager, experienced or not experienced, will have an idea how to do it better than all of us. It's just human nature. And it's perfectly okay. Another good question.
She can go first.
Okay. Hi, Biggby. I'm Maggie. I have a question that's pretty general. In your opinion, what do you think? What is the disadvantage and advantage of being a young entrepreneur in nowadays society?
You know, I think it's easier to become an entrepreneur nowadays than ever before. I mean, Paul's got some money, so that helps a lot. And he's willing to share. Some of that stuff was not available, 10, 20 years ago. So I think from that perspective, it's helpful. The biggest difficulty that, if you're talking about right after college, you graduate from college, you start your own business, or you work with somebody else. The biggest disadvantage is you won't have a life for a while. And I'll be very honest. And again, you can argue that's the best time to do it. So, it comes back to you. Me personally, I would say that working at the bank was a huge experience for me. It showed me so much more, and you're learning on somebody else's dime. Hate to say it, but it's the truth. But, if I have something that I'm ready to do, and I have the capital to do it, then it might be worth it. But the problem is not starting the business, in my opinion. The biggest problem is when things go wrong, where do you go? Do you have the appetite? Are you that person that is willing to be rejected? Are you willing to be, I hate to say it, but hopefully you'll get what I'm trying to say. In a way, you lose the battle for a while. You know, there's so much negative when things don't go good that it takes you down psychologically. Are you that person that is able to rebound? Do you have enough support? That's the difficulty with, I think, with the entrepreneur. But I think it's going to be difficult within right after college or 10 years after college. But the difference is 10 years after college, you might have a little bit more experience in life. You might find that perfect person that will support you more. So I think as an entrepreneur, you need a lot of support. Not necessarily just money, but a place to go to invent and get ideas. A lot of successful people, I mean, they fail so many times before they become successful. But if you notice, they're always going to have people that they had went back to and talked to.
What would your advice be to your college self now, looking at your life now? Are you happy that you're still paying your loans off, or are you like?
I am very happy because success to me, I mean, I'm one of those people that when I have debt, I'm more motivated. If I pay things off, then I'm going to stay home and watch a movie. You know, again, it's a personal thing, but I think that I mean, a perfect scenario. You would have never seen the iPhone if Steve Jobs would have stopped a while ago. Google could stop in a moment, and I'm sure they have enough money to keep them going for a while. But it's not about money. I mean, people that are entrepreneurs, they don't get into it for money. Of course, money drives everything. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it doesn't, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But money cannot be the motivation. And that's part of the struggle that we have when we hire graduates, is because they have a price in mind that in today's world, we can't match it.
Well, I was going to make like a comment and a question.
Sure.
I was wondering something that I'm passionate about, and I just want to know, is it attitude, and should you be willing to like lose more money than to make it?
Well, I think anytime you're going to start a business, very few companies make money at the beginning. When I say at the beginning, really, I mean in the first 5 years. There isn't a lot of companies that get that lucky. But the people's passion are different. So their people's passions are, you know, I don't care about the money. I want to help people if they're in specific industry, and that's wonderful. But as long as you know the parameter of what you want, then that's wonderful. But if you're saying, no, so this is at the beginning, this is the price that I have to pay in the first 2, 3, 5 years. I know that it's gonna suck my blood in terms of money. I'm okay with it. Then that's perfect. But you got to have that time frame that you're evaluating, was that the right decision for you? You know, a couple going into a business like that, most of the time you're going to find one person working full time somewhere to keep the health care, to keep all that stuff going and something coming in, and one person is exploring another idea. That's a perfect setup. But if you're all by yourself and you're doing it, that's awesome, as long as you know this is what it's going to take. And then I evaluate it every 2, 3 years. In my opinion, the hardest thing with entrepreneur is really how much work physically it takes. Not the mental side of it is the hardest thing. So when you start seeing that success, it becomes to be rewarding. Yes, ma'am.
So you have your brother, but what advice would you give for someone that's, say, looking for a business partner or partners? Like, what's important? Maybe like their personality traits, or like how long you know them. The whole don't do business with family rule.
You know, that's a great question, because I used to get this a lot in the banking days, because you used to see two people, best friends, brothers, whatever, and they will come in and do this stuff, and they never ask themselves that question, what is it? In my own personal opinion, sometimes you have to have partners, and it's hard to avoid because of whether it's investment or whether it's just you need somebody else, if you're depending on the business model. My number one thing is, what's your role? What's your role? Defining the role. Because that is one thing that, everybody wants to be the boss. Everybody wants to be the CEO. And if they say they don't, that's awesome. But make sure it's true. And you won't know that till things start not going the way as planned. And when things go the way you planned it, then it becomes to be successful. Who's going to get the credit? So when you start putting that down, you start thinking of that stuff. When both of you are in agreement about a way to do business or whatever the next step is, who's going to make the final call? That's the definition that I think gets a lot of us in trouble. And then everything in writing. Now, a lot of business people, a lot of true entrepreneurs don't like the writing stuff because they're not into that. They want to get going. Okay? So I tell you that, and just be careful. Make sure that whoever you're getting into business with, you understand them, you know them, and you know them well on a personal and professional level. But don't have your best friend be your partner. Unless if you have something special and both of you guys, one person is, let's say if you're into web development, like just an example, one person is a programmer and one person is a designer. Way two different things. We have to rely on each other. But when both of you guys are graphic designers or both of you guys are programmers, it's not going to work. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, great, thank you.
A couple questions from the live stream. You mentioned good idea and then executable idea. Can you expand on like the difference of that?
Sure. Well, I think that all of us have great ideas. I mean, I think that I'm sure there's some of us that have better ways of doing things than Google does. I'm sure there's some things on the Apple 5 that some of us don't like. So there's a huge difference between having a really, really good idea and can I do it? Can it be done? So the idea by itself, don't limit yourself. I also know that there's some people that say, you know what, dream big, which is perfect. But also dream big, but you're not going to get to that big result all of a sudden. It takes time to get there. Are you willing and are you able? Do you have the appetite to fail in the process to get to that big thing? Does that make sense? Any other good questions? Sure.
I'm also interested in starting a consulting business at some point. What would you suggest doing to kind of start and ensure?
Well, right now, one of the best things that is going for us for 7C right now, we don't do any advertising. We are 100% word of mouth, which is obviously the best way to do it, but you go slow. Okay? But really, in that profession, for us, I don't need 100 clients. I need 5 to 10 good clients. So for me, I can have a couple of clients that can keep me busy the entire year. So we focus on the quality, not the quantity from the 7C world. We do a lot of consulting on the culture intelligence side. Because we do culture training. So if you're going to China, if you're going to Brazil, what do you do, what you don't do, and we have assessments that we're able to put in place. That's all word of mouth. The beauty again is once a client comes to you and referred by somebody else that comes to you, it's not price anymore. We're very, very competitive in price, but really I don't compete on price. We don't compete on price. Sometimes I'm actually lower than everybody. Sometimes we're higher than everybody. It's really the relationship is what we're after. So, for us, it's that relationship that keeps building and building and building. Once they get to know you, they come back to you. So when we're adding on like the special programs, the trip to China, I'm going to send it to my client base. On my client base, they're going to probably be very excited to go with somebody that they can trust versus somebody. So when we add a product, we try to add it within what we do. Because I don't want to be known for translation and interpretation. That's too boring, to be honest. Me personally, I don't do any translation. Translation is just very dry. I'll go back to me. I'm more of a marketing guy. I want to get out. I want to talk to people. I want to do that kind of stuff. So we get a lot more excited when we have the culture training, when we get things of that nature. The translation becomes to be very, very huge when we have a client any client that needs translation will need the rest of our products. Interpretation is somebody physically coming out and interpreting, or doing it through telephonic, or doing it through video, so it's not written. But anybody that needs that kind of service will need the other services. So when we add a service, it's not really totally out of reach in terms of what we do. It's all connected to the culture, to the language. So that kind of helps us tremendously when we add it. Does that answer your question? Good. Any other good questions?
Talk about forming a team, getting people and help people to their needs. How do you go about finding people for the candidates?
It's experience. We're working on a project right now that is from Portuguese to English. And inside that project, it sounded very simple, something that we do all the time. So, we assign it to our translators and editors and proofreaders and so on. And there are sometimes that things don't work out the way you plan to. That translator thinks that they can get it done within a period of time, but they call you the night before it's due and say, you know what, can you assign some of these files to somebody else because I'm swamped? You know, so some of it is experience, and you have to get burned a couple times. Again, it's that experience, it's that appetite to kind of really take you, 5, 10 steps back. So you have to go through that. So you have to have a good way to evaluate people as they come. But initially, it's unbelievably difficult to know who's going to work out and who's not. It's very difficult. It really, selecting people, I think all of us here will tell you, that's one of the hardest things, is to select the right people. And there's books and articles about what to look for. I read a lot of them, and I tried to execute them, but some of them don't pertain to what I do. And if they do pertain to what I do, that individual is not really looking for that kind of thing. Everybody's interested in a job, and that's really one thing I will leave all of you guys with. All of us are interested in a job, but not all of us are interested in the work that goes with the job. If there is anything that you need to get out of it as an entrepreneur, know that. You will also be in that position. You're looking for people, and they look really good resume-wise, experience-wise. Somehow they get to your office, then a few months later you're like, really? That's the same person? I see that they wanted the check, they wanted the job, but they're not willing to put in the time to do it better than everybody else. As an entrepreneur, you always focus on doing it better than everybody else, not just doing the job. Big difference.
Well, let's wrap this up right here. We're going to end the program now. Thank you very much, Fathy.